I'd like to welcome you here to Jerusalem. I'm delighted to see you, President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. It's a pleasure to host you and your distinguished delegation here in Israel. And we know that you're a great friend of the Jewish people and a great friend of Israel. So we really like you. Being the first female president of the European Commission in history, I'm glad you met a bunch of members from my government, which I'm proud to say is the government with the most amount of female ministers in Israel's history. It's also the government with the greatest variety in our history. We have religious and secular, right and left, Jews and Arabs, and it's quite a juggling act, but we're keeping it up. Yesterday, my government celebrated a year in office, and what a year it's been. Over the last year, we rejuvenated Israel's ties with our neighbors in the region. We want to build bridges to peace. We repositioned climate change on Israel's agenda and made it a national priority. And we redefined Israel's place in the global community. And I'm happy to say that today Israel and Europe are on a very strong and positive trajectory. Trade, innovation, economic cooperation are soaring. We're witnessing our partnership reach new heights. Half a year ago, Israel joined Horizon Europe yet again. This week, my government approved that Israel will be joining Creative Europe, and today we'll be joining hands towards even greater endeavors. The Jewish people in Europe share a long history. Today we can look forward knowing that Europe is in the hands of leaders such as yourself who understand the weight and the responsibility and take firm action in the face of anti-Semitism. Your words today at the Ben Gurion University were powerful. You said Israel and Europe are bound to be friends and allies because the history of Europe is the history of the Jewish people. I could not agree more. So I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate you, Madam President, on your honorary doctorate from Ben Gurion University of the Negev. It's a good university, Madam Doctor. With the ongoing and devastating war in Ukraine comes vast global implications, and it's time for the international community to work together. Even in our region, we're seeing a potential for great famine and distress that can have profound implications for the stability and the welfare of people, which is why today both of us will be discussing ways where the EU and Israel can cooperate on food security, energy, and more. In recent years, Israel went from being a gas importer to becoming a gas exporter, and we're currently working to produce natural gas from more natural gas from Israel's economic waters. I'd like to take this opportunity to commend the respective leaders of the EU for their recent decision to censure Iran at the International Atomic Energy Agency. This decision came after Iran refused to give the IAEA satisfactory explanations for traces of uranium found in sites that Iran failed to declare. And if hiding information wasn't enough, the Iranian regime also threatened to retaliate if the IAEA were to vote against them. And when the IAEA indeed voted against Iran, Iran responded by turning off 27 surveillance cameras from nuclear sites across the country, essentially cutting off the international community's ability to see what Iran's doing. This is a very dangerous move. Iran's belligerent actions should be a wake-up call for the international community and should be met with clear and strong consequences, increased pressure, and holding Iran accountable at the UN Security Council. The only way for Iran to be stopped is if we act and stop them. Israel and EU are natural partners, and we've got a lot to talk about at dinner today. But before we roll up our sleeves and get to work, I really, again, want to thank you for your deep friendship to the Jewish people and the State of Israel. We know that it's from your heart. And thank you for being a partner in this new chapter of relations between Israel and Europe. Thank you very much and welcome to Israel.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Prime Minister. Thank you for the warm welcome I receive here in Jerusalem. And indeed, the European Union and Israel share ties and bonds, unique bonds, because we have a shared history and we share values. And therefore, I'm very glad about you mentioned the excellent cooperation we have in the different fields, like energy, culture you mentioned, the trade, of course, research and innovation, outstanding, or health, just to name a few. And on health, I want to thank you and the people of Israel and the scientists of Israel too, because you have been outstanding at the beginning of the pandemic when all of us were looking for an effective and safe vaccine. And the fact that you had an outstanding approach to the vaccine campaign here in Israel with collecting data on a broad scientific basis, sharing the data with us, gave you a front-runner position where you proved to the world that the mRNA vaccines are safe and effective. And I cannot thank you enough for that, because we know by experience now how devastating this pandemic was and how important the development and then the application of the mRNA vaccines has been. I'm very happy indeed that Israel is participating in our research and innovation program. Horizon Europe, that's wonderful because you are outstanding, and indeed your scientists are phenomenal, and I'm convinced that both Israel and the European Union will benefit tremendously from this cooperation. I had a first impression of the Ben Gurion University today. I will tell you at dinner, it was fascinating. You know how excellent they are, but I'm still thrilled about all the stories and the research passion that I could sense there in Ben Gurion University, mainly also, of course, for the pressing issues that we have to tackle together. So I think this great cooperation will make our partnership even stronger. This part is particularly important in these difficult and bleak times. You mentioned Russia's war against Ukraine, and it has indeed severe consequences for Europe and far beyond, and we need to work together to address them. The first is indeed that we want to boost our energy cooperation with Israel. The European Union was the biggest, most important client from the supplier Russia, oil, gas, and coal. But with the beginning of this war and the attempt of Russia to blackmail us through energy by deliberately cutting the energy supplies, we decided to cut off and to get rid of the dependency of Russian fossil fuels and to move away from Russia and diversify to trustworthy suppliers. So it is for us very important, and I'm very grateful that we are now discussing this fascinating project that you are willing to increase the deliveries of gas to the European Union via Egypt. And tomorrow we will already take a very important step with the signing of a trilateral memorandum of understanding between Israel, the European Union, and Egypt. This will help step up the deliveries of energy to Europe. So here you will bring from Israel via pipeline, hopefully one day hydrogen-ready pipeline, to Egypt. It will be liquefied to LNG and then brought to the European Union. I think this is a very important project, but we know that over time we should jointly explore the use of infrastructure for renewable energy. This is the energy of the future. It's good for climate, it's good for our independence, it creates highly paying jobs. So it is an outstanding step bringing our energy cooperation to the next level. You have here in abundance all the resources that are necessary for renewables, I mean sun and wind and other resources. Therefore, I'm very much looking forward to intensify the cooperation on that field. Second, we have the duty to help to protect the world from a major food crisis. You were mentioning it. The Kremlin's war and Russia's blockade of the Black Sea are threatening the global food security, especially in vulnerable regions like yours here. 20 million tons of grain are trapped in Ukraine and cannot be exported. So we're doing our part and our best to help to export it, to get the grain out of Ukraine, to boost our own production, to support neighbors in ramping up food production as well. But we have to look further to the mid and long term, and here Israel can play a tremendously important role, because you have a unique expertise in innovative, resource-efficient agriculture. I mean, I don't have to tell you that the founders of your country have made basically crops spring up from the driest of deserts. You made the desert bloom. And today, the world desperately needs these technologies to really have a shift what food supply and food dependency is concerned. Finally, the EU and Israel have both in common the interest in a secure and stable Middle East, and we see you as a crucial partner in pursuing this objective. I want to commend you on the normalization of your relations with some of your Arab neighbors, the Abraham Accord. This is a big step forward. And in time, it could, I hope, also help advance relations between Israel and the Palestinians. We strongly condemn the recent terror attacks in Israel, and we mourn their victims. The violence must stop. So we very much welcome all the efforts towards peace, and we think that the Abraham Accords could offer hope towards that goal. I'm very much looking forward to the dinner. There are many more topics we have to discuss, and many thanks for having me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome to Israel.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Let's go out.
Yeah.